Hi global entrepreneurs, welcome to BGS YouTube channel. We've had quite an interesting couple of months. We've been interviewing a lot of people in the Portuguese startup ecosystem, from venture capital investors all the way to startup founders and policymakers. We just wanted to share some more light on the Portuguese ecosystem, and we hope you learn a couple of things from these interviews. Enjoy. Okay, so thank you for being available to join us on today's episode where we get to speak with investors and great stakeholders in this Portuguese innovation ecosystem. So I'd like to do like an intro, obviously about yourselves individually, and then what Maize is. So maybe I can go this way.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm Luís. I'm a partner at Maize, and I've been here for 3 years, and these have been the 3 most fun years of my life, and with a lot of impact.
I'm Rita, and I'm the head of acceleration at Maize, and I've been with Maize for 5 years now, which has been very exciting as well to see the whole impact investing development here in Portugal and in Europe.
And I'm António. I'm the founder of Maize 6 years ago. I'm very passionate about impact, and I really want to use my skills and intellect and everyone's intellect in our team to leave the world a better place than it is now.
Fantastic.
Sorry for the cliche.
No, but it's good. We need more people like who are passionate about making an impact. So tell us about Maize.
Sure. So Maize is an impact investment firm that was created by the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation back in 2013. And when we say we are an impact investment firm, impact is the first thing you should know about Maize, because everything we do, impact is a common denominator as a positive filter. We're not trying to let things a little bit better, we're trying to do things that solve social and environmental problems. And the second thing is about investment. So we're not necessarily in the business of attracting philanthropy or donations. We firmly believe that impact is the greatest economic opportunity of our times. And by economic opportunity, what it means is that social and environmental problems are big, and hiding behind these problems are great opportunities. If we solve food waste alone, it's a $1 trillion per year economic cost to the world. So if someone solves it through a market-based solution, a lot of people will profit from it, and the environment will say thank you. And that's our vision. So when we were created as Maize, we didn't know in what we would become, and we've been trying to understand the market, and as of now we are investors acting in 3 fronts. One, through a venture capital fund which has 35 million euros to invest in European impact startups, so it's an early stage fund. 2, accelerating these businesses and fostering partnerships between them and larger corporates, because we're seeing that the big corporates need to catch up on innovating towards impact. And last thing is helping governments, who are typically, and in Europe, the biggest impact investors, because they fund services for those that cannot pay for the services, for them to be more effective and efficient. And we've developed social impact bonds, which are a very acclaimed topic on impact.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So now, having significant climate impact is very critical right now, because we see on the news everything that's happening in terms of like climate change, etc. So there's no better time to have this kind of initiative right now. But obviously things have changed 5 years, especially in Portugal. There's a time in Portugal where you talk about startups wasn't a thing. Now it's a thing. Everyone wants to get into it, and there's definitely some sort of involvement. Even in the sustainability landscape, things are changing really rapidly. Okay, and I must imagine that they will pose to you some sort of challenges. Especially because founders are also changing with that challenge. So the question is, how have you evolved from that time where there was nothing about innovation to now trying to lead the way, especially in Portugal, in terms of like climate change? How has that changed for you, and how have you tried to adapt, put in new measures to adapt to those changes?
So I think that actually we were quite lucky, because we were founded 6 years ago. And as you've introduced, like 5 years ago, the ecosystem was completely different. And this is when we, with Gulbenkian Foundation, really wanted to, bring the impact investing topic and market to Portugal. So we started slowly working, and we started, involving all the relevant stakeholders in the market here in Portugal, from the private sector to the public sector to the legal sector, to understand, okay, what do we need to do in order to create a market here? So I think, and from then onwards, we've continued our journey by studying what was happening in more developed markets, understanding the circumstances here, and so I think that it was just a very organic growth, and we just literally surfed the wave. I don't think we had to ever adapt or seen like a change in the market and say, okay, we need to do this because we're lagging behind. I think it was just quite organic to understand, like Luís said, that these are the three fronts that we feel are needed to be worked on in order to foster what we believe in, the accomplishment of this mission and taking advantage of this market that we believe in. And I think that was it, to be fair.
And it's very interesting because despite all the evidence you have on climate change and how important impact investing it is, there's still this skepticism about the returns that you get on investments. I'm sure, how do you make people believe, especially your limited partners, the fact that, okay, you know what, this is the fund you should go into, because I think that's a major thing, because right now we do see some investment banks trying to veer towards that, but there's still that skepticism that, having impact investing isn't the place to be, even though there's overwhelming evidence that in the future, perhaps, a lot of innovation will have to do with solving this climate change problem. So right now, what is your strategy to help people, in quote, believe, and make them put their money where they are?
Yeah, so people are not making money on, German sovereign debt, right? It's negative interest rate. It's, people are paying to access debt. So the concept of, where return comes from and how to achieve, alpha net, etc. Like, it's a bit, it's not vague, but it's changeable. And the other thing to that is, in my view, something related to a self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy is something that is born out of a fake fact, but because people believe in it, it actually becomes a real fact. And because there is that belief, less capital is being mobilized into the impact sector, and therefore there's that, kind of myth that to have impact we sacrifice returns. I think the conclusion we will all achieve is that some impact investments will yield better returns, some impact investments will yield market-based returns, some impact investments will yield lower returns, and some impact investments will fail. But that's fine, because that's life in general. And if you and I do a challenge right now of going on Google and you try to find evidence that impact investment has lower returns than the benchmark, and I try to find evidence that impact investment has higher returns than the benchmark, we'll both find evidence to support our both claims. So the question will be, what do consumers want? And what do the next generations want? And if you picture an image of a crossroads where you've got consumers in one road, investors on the other road, corporates and millennials talent on the other roads, and who is going there first? I think consumers are going to dictate what corporates do. It's not a coincidence that fast-moving consumer goods companies like Unilever and Procter & Gamble are being the first ones to doing acquisitions in the fair trade and ethical space. It's what consumers want. So it's a matter of time into like the return equation being adjusted to say, oh, we've included impact and our returns yet or still are on par with others. And then we also tend to talk about impact investment as an asset class. And that is wrong from the beginning, because within impact investment, you can have the bond market, green bond market, you can have VC, which is extremely risky. And that's why I'm always so like, I love VC, but VC is not a panacea for everything. You have the public equities market, you have, housing markets with more sustainable, like So talking about impact investment as being one thing is like talking about investment being another, one thing only, and that's, you know, we're comparing apples with oranges. And final thing I would say about it is that impact is just a strategy like cryptocurrencies are for funds. Like when we see what are the type of things we look at exactly the same things. We want a great team, like Rita said, market. It's just our focus is on impact. It's a strategy, not a vertical. And those two.
I just wanted to complement with so touching on why the investors are, you know, how we can attract investors, and this is actually something that we see is increasing. And besides the dynamics of the market changing into the direction of, you know, seeking for impact from the consumer's point of view especially, I think that impact investing is also looked at by the investors as a great risk mitigation strategy, especially when we see, you know, the threats that climate change is posing in, you know, all of us as consumers, but especially to companies, to massive corporates, and we've seen a lot of great problems. And impact investing companies have certain mechanisms to filter for, you know, risk. At the end of the day, it is risk. It's the fact that you are, you know, you have higher concerns for inclusivity. So socially, you are, you know, making sure that you mitigate certain, like social aspects. From an environment point of view, you're ensuring that you mitigate for, you know, problems with your infrastructure, for example. And so this is one of the reasons why the cost of capital in this area is lower, because effectively this is just, you know, making a smarter use of your resources and having a longer term perspective. Because in business school, and we talk a lot about this, in business school you learn that a company is perpetuous, right? Like when you manage a company, you always have the assumption that it will never end, it will never go bankrupt unless you think it may go, and then you change your strategy. But in general terms, it's how you manage. But when we look at the market, as sometimes we see it, is very extractive, and actually this is conflictuous with this strategy. And a lot of decisions are actually not taking into account the long-term perspective. And impact is, the planet has limited resources. And if you want to have a long-term strategy, then we need to have strategies and take decisions that are in line with preserving the planet, for example.
Okay. So last question. There's a big buzz about Portugal. Is the buzz worth it or not? So it's a question I always ask everybody that I interview. So there's a big buzz, overly optimistic or current reality, and why?
I think we deserve the buzz. I don't think it's just, you know, events and stuff like that. That's actually very good projects, startups, teams on the ground. So, and we are very privileged to see beyond the news. So I think we can attest to that. Like, there's a lot of substance behind it. And coming back to what Rita said, there's a reason for that. It's maybe before we were seen as a cheap source of engineering development talent. Now that gap is kind of closing versus other markets, and we have way more talent, and not only home talent but inflow from other markets, and the infrastructure keeps getting better and better, and so we are becoming an even better test market. And every startup that starts here starts immediately with international mindsets. So I think, yeah, overall it's deserved, and there's always the sun, which is, it's true, and it stays there, and it's always, and that will always be there, and it's part of the buzz. I don't know how much percent, but it's always amazing.
Everything counts. So lastly, how do entrepreneurs get access to everything that you're doing at Maze? Where should they go to? what should they do? Do they need to benefit from the fund, from the acceleration program?
Rita at Maze.
Ah.
Impact.
Fantastic.
No. Our emails
Thank
are
you.
everywhere.
And they can just
Instagram,
shoot you- they can just
Facebook,
shoot you an email.
Medium.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can.
Yeah.
We're very
obviously.
open.
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic.
And just
You know
join
what?
our community events, of
Okay.
course. Please
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
No one knows us, so we still have time
So,
to
Yeah.
so on the Instagram, all of this information is on your Instagram and social
Website,
media.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did.
Yes.
There's a lot
Thank
of
you.
information to unpack. So thank you very much for being available for this interview. And yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I hope you really enjoyed that video. If you want to know more about Portuguese startup ecosystem as well as the top promising scale-ups in Portugal, make sure you go to our website at www.scaleupportugal.tech and download all our reports that we've written for the ecosystem. So if you just want to find out about what other activities we do regarding the ecosystem, how we accelerate startups here in Portugal, also make sure you go to www.pgi.pt and send us an email and we'll get back to you. Thank you.